Makes me look
But it
bald.
should be, it should be a good show. And welcome to the show, streamers. If you guys are new to the show, we are formerly at the Boss Hog Radio Network, and now we are at my home studio, which is got a little bit more capability, to be honest with you. So anyhow, we're on satellite radio, and we're going to start the radio portion of the show in about 5.5 minutes, according to the clock behind me. We call it the MBS clock because basically one of our fans, MBS in Colorado, he's probably donated enough for the show, and product and money to at least cover the cost of that, and a lot more. And he's threatening to send me a bigger clock, Chief. But a bigger screen. It's a clock, but it you know what, a radio clock, it's about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and you run HDMI cables to monitors basically, and that's how you do it. So that's about a 53-inch TV right there. And I got that for Randy so he could actually see, because he used to squint. He couldn't see. I had a 32-inch monitor on a tripod behind me, and he couldn't see it. So I got that for Randy. But MVS is threatening to send a 65-incher, and I got in a big battle with the wife. I had a painting that was on the wall that she didn't want. She wanted it there. We had this big battle, and so I replaced the painting with the TV, and that's one of the few battles that I won. So.
Well, Randy doesn't pay any attention to the clock anyway, does he?
Well, that's a good point. I don't know. It's probably a mute anyhow, because you're right. How often does he really pay attention to the clock? So, but
yeah, I think you ought to let MVS watch the show for free as much as he contributes.
MVS, no charge today. Watch the show for free. He's a good guy. And he lives in Colorado. I guess there's a lot of good guys in Colorado, right? Because that's where you're at, right?
Well, there are, but I tell you, he's probably I don't know how many hundreds of miles away. We're a big state, and we have a whole bunch of different climates and different geographies. So there's a lot of desolation up there. So I suspect MVS went up there because it's nice and quiet, and he probably doesn't have any close neighbors, and that's probably just the way he likes it. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but that's what makes me a media personality, is I can make up stuff as I go along, right?
There you go. He is on right now. He's on at Rumble. Apparently it's only 10 degrees. Is that correct? Is it really? You think it's 10 degrees in Northwest Colorado? That's pretty cold.
Oh, it could be. We're going to be we're probably 30 when I get up to 50 today. So yeah. He's on the other side of the mountain. He's on the other side of a couple of mountains.
All right. Well, all right. 10 degrees is colder than what I like, so I'm glad I'm here in Tampa, Florida. So, and we're live on LinkedIn, so we are definitely on Rumble. We're on I can't even remember how many Facebook pages we're on, 5 or 6, and we're on YouTube. We're on Vimeo, and the list goes on and on. So anyhow, it looks like all the connections are working today. We're gonna have a good show, guys. And we've got a doctor in the house today, which is nice. So yeah, we're gonna be breaking down some of the deeper stuff today. So I can't wait. Now I know why.
I tell you,
see, this is just a blue light, but I want to look warm, so I'm gonna hit a button and poof! Look at that. Look at that.
See if I can brighten myself up. How about this?
It's like having Photoshop, All right, we're 2 minutes out from going, live on the, live back on the show and hitting the radio. And if you guys have anything you want us to talk about, go ahead and type it on the stream. Now, we're going to be live all this week. And then next week, as a lot of you guys know, we're going to the SHOT Show. Yeah, Dr. Schultz is going to be there. I'm going to be there. I'm traveling with Brett Bartlett from Tampa Airport. Jeff Wenninger is going to be there from Ohio. We're going to have Randy Sutton will be there. But Randy lives there. And also Jamie Borden, Sergeant Jamie Borden with Critical Incident Review. Him and Von Kleem, who is with Force Science, they live in the Vegas area. So they're both going to be there. Danny King, who lives in the area, will be there also. Travis Yates is coming from Tulsa to attend SHOT Show. So he will be there. We are going to be doing live shows this is the plan. I say this is the plan. We're going on media passes. And so the plan is to do a live show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so that means Monday show and Friday show. Friday I'll be on a plane with Brett headed back. So Monday and Friday will not be live, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday should be live from SHOT Show. And so our panelists, we will be there sitting at a table. We'll have one camera, and that's how you'll see it. And we'll be picking topics, specific topics to talk about. So we're not going to be, unless something really major happens in the news. I'm not going to be spending all my time at SHOT Show doing research on stories and all that stuff. So hopefully you guys will forgive me for 3 days, but we will have some interesting topics. I need some help picking them out. I mean, initially I'm thinking about, things like qualified immunity, officer created jeopardy, things like that are always current, So, but anyhow, we're, think about that, Chief. Maybe you can come up with a good topic or two for us to cover, but
I'm thinking about you and Brett bunking together all week.
No, you'll be there. Don't worry. 4 seconds. Here we go. Radio. All right, guys, and welcome to Leo Roundtable at leoroundtable.com. My name is Chip the Block, and I'm your host, and we're a group of law enforcement professionals that talk about today's news and issues, but we do it from a law enforcement perspective. And let me introduce our vast cast that we have today. Dr. Joel Schultz. So thank you, Chief, for being on the show. We appreciate it. And it's a good show, guys, because, after the weekend, we have a lot of news to cover, and believe me, we do. And I want to mention our sponsors. Please support our sponsors, guys. They go to great lengths to bring this quality content to you. We have Galls at galls.com, complianttechnologies.com, which is our satellite sponsor. We also have aeroprecisionusa.com, our arms sponsor, Gunlearn.com, MyMedicare.live, SafeguardRecruiting.com, our streaming sponsor. And yes, thanks to them, we're streaming to over 1 million people during the live show right now. TwoBells.com, they built their new online store at LeoRoundtable.com. So if you want to check out our cool gear, and guys, the prices are bare bones, rock bottom. We don't make a dime off of anything in the store. Go to LeoRoundtable.com, go to the online store, check out all the gear that we have, shirts and hats and pants and shorts. And I mean, if you're looking for something that's not there, get a hold of me or Tracy at Two Bells that built the store, and we'll find it and get it on there for you. Also, a shout out to Brian Burns for the Tampa Free Press at TampaFP.com. Thanks for carrying our content, Brian. Also, Ray Dietrich with formerlawman.com. And finally, our very own Travis Yates with lawofficer.com. Thanks to all those entities for helping make this show happen. And now, what in the world are we going to be talking about today? Guys, put your seatbelts on. Deadly ICE shooting raises questions about law enforcement policies on shooting into a moving vehicle. I can't wait to talk about that one. And then we've got, I'm just going to title the update on the Minneapolis shooting. I've got a ton of articles. I'm going to be going through mostly the titles to let you guys know what's going on, the officer having to go in the hiding, threats and all that stuff. But there are a few of the articles that we're going to take some snippets out of that have a little bit more information. And then we're going to jump to Portland because, 24 hours after what happened in Minneapolis happened, we had a similar incident that happened in Portland. Then we got Christopher Taylor. He is reinstated as a peace officer, or his licenses anyhow. We got DHS officer Knox loser to the ground in Minnesota for blocking their vehicle. That was an interesting one. We've got Idaho Falls police officer fatally shot a domestic disturbance suspect when he grabbed a large knife. And we have 10 Florida first responders are fired. 4 are charged after a 19-year-old is whipped with his own belt and waterboarded outside the police station, the fire station, not police, the fire station. You know how those firefighters are, Chief. We got body cam video showing a man. You do. Yeah, we won't hold that against you either. Body cam video shows a man throwing a Washington trooper to the ground and stealing her patrol car. And, we had previously covered the story. But now we got body cam. We got a lot more information. We're going to touch on it again, but we have covered it. But I remember during the story, I thought I read somewhere that she was a supervisor, and sure enough, she's a lieutenant. There were a lot of female law enforcement officers involved in this one. We'll discuss that. Judge rejects Democrats' lawsuit seeking access to Florida's alligator Alcatraz. Wow, that happened. And then we got Oklahoma Highway Patrol dash cam video. It shows, a trooper in training being taught how to do a pit maneuver, and it was successful. And it was like online. It was like coaching, in the cockpit, and you guys get to see how it goes down. So it's pretty cool. So, and so Chief, and I'm getting a little background noise, Chief. But if you guys, if you're ready, Chief, we'll go jump to the first one here. WTSP.com, deadly eye shooting raises questions about law enforcement policies on shooting into a moving vehicle. Before the show started, I was telling the chief that I have been begging law enforcement agencies around the country because the writing's been on the wall, right? I know I'm not the only guy that saw it coming. You remember the first time, Chief, we saw a cop shooting through the windshield at a bad guy while he's driving, and then of course after that happened, and that got circulated. How many times have we seen that happen now? I'm not challenging the justification of those kinds of shootings, but what I am saying is that, like this article points out, there are questions now about law enforcement policies, and not about them having to do it, but having policies about shooting. It talks about into moving cars. I really don't mind broadening that, shooting at or from a moving vehicle, and whether or not they're occupied or not, because we just don't get enough training like that. And so even though you have a policy maybe prohibiting it, but then you've got an officer that has to do it in order to stay alive or to protect somebody, then you've got an issue too. And you're certainly, if it's not in policy, you're not training officers how to do that. So, but Chief, you're not only an academic, which is a good thing. You've been there, done that, and you've been a chief at different locations a number of times. So, can't wait to get your input on this one.
Well, I've also been hit by cars twice.
Wow. Without wearing a nice uniform. Did you have ice on a rain jacket or something?
No, but it was very dark, and it was dark, and I was jaywalking. The other one I was well, I don't need to tell you war stories, but I think Danny King Friday said we don't really know what to do with moving cars and shooting in and out of them, and so we need to have the research on the few anomalous, relatively few, considering all the different types of dangerous encounters and assaults. Vehicular assault is one of them. And we usually see one or two intentional fatal vehicle assaults in the officer down reports every year. Most, of course, of the deaths of cars hitting cops are not intentional. But the bottom line is every policy has either specifically stated or at least implied, there's this asterisk that says, but you do what you have to do. There's no policy, no matter how clear-cut you think it might be, that's going to cover every situation. So, the other thing is when particularly in light of the two incidents that we've been talking about with our federal agents in Minnesota, it's not really relevant for the criminal charge whether the officer was in policy or out of policy, or whether he had trained or not. That's going to be a matter of question in a civil suit, and I don't imagine there'll be much of a civil suit. I imagine there'll be a check written without a court battle, regardless of the true liability that a jury would find. The question is,
you're talking about
was he
a check written for the Minneapolis, even though
yeah, I think so.
Even though it's a federal.
Yeah, I think so. Is because it'll be and obviously a 42 USC 1983 lawsuit. They're probably, her wife is probably getting daily phone calls from people saying, "Hey, can I take your case on a contingency?" And we can talk about the beauty of federal suits for lawyers is they don't take a percentage like they would in a state suit. They get paid for whatever their expenses were. So the plaintiff, if they prevail, the plaintiff gets the whole award, and then lawyers' fees are awarded separately to the attorney. So it's a win-win if they both go that route. But as far as the policy goes, I'm not sure that we have the research to look at as many of those encounters as we possibly can and break it down. What are the physics of it? What's the ballistics of it? What are the time, motion, perceptions of it? There's quite a bit of stuff in the Force Science Institute. Are you a pilot by any chance, Chip?
I'm not, but and I scared my wife recently because I told her I want to get my pilot's license, and she laid the law down. No, I'm not.
She'll let you jump out of an airplane, but she does not
She
want you to
would.
fly it, right?
She would, yeah. As long as she was
But
the one in charge of packing the parachute, yeah.
but there's research that comes out of pilot training about this idea of looming, that sometimes things don't appear. They might appear on camera, but they don't appear to the person scanning the skies until they're right up there, and then it's kind of a visual distortion. So that could be a factor in particularly a rapidly moving or rapidly approaching vehicle. So I don't really know if we have enough science behind the dynamics of a vehicle assault and an armed response to really make a cohesive policy. And again, if we have a policy, there's going to be that statement that should be in every policy. This is the guideline that can apply to every possible situation. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the event, or before the event ends, if it's a question of, well, am I going to violate policy or am I going to save my life? Guess what? Going to save my life.
Go home. Yeah. And I know we're getting close to our first break. I really would like to see policy, because I know that they're not going to do training or get a course curriculum on it unless they've got some kind of policy addressing it. I know that in Tampa, we prohibit shooting at moving vehicles unless they are a risk of serious bodily injury or death to us or somebody else. And so they're smart enough not to cut that completely out. There is something I want to bring into the equation, though, but we got 15 seconds before our first commercial break. So, guys, we're going to take a brief commercial break. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, guys, it's time to talk about our favorite title sponsor, Galls at Galls.com. And as police officers, we love to buy stuff. And then you throw the online, the internet, and all the options. It's like limitless. But look, here's a little reminder about what's really important here. You want to support the companies that actually support law enforcement. And I don't know if a company does that better than Galls at Galls.com. Even their motto, like the banner says behind me, is proud to serve those who serve, which of course they do in spectacular fashion. And not only that, they walk the talk by supporting dozens of focus organizations like this radio show. So when you're looking for gear, please support our title sponsor by going to Galls at Galls.com. And they're going to do you one better. For the loyal listeners of the show, it's back, Radio 15. Type in Radio 15 in order to get 15% off your next purchase. And hey, don't wait, do it. And if you're not familiar, Galls says, I'm telling you guys, everything but like guns and ammo. They're even making their own mission-made pants now. Go there, Galls.com, check out the site, see what they have, and they have go bags. I think you'd be very impressed at what you find. Galls.com. Now it's time to talk about Compliant Technologies at CompliantTechnologies.com, our satellite sponsor. And they're committed to providing non-lethal solutions to help officers gain the upper hand safely and rapidly in a humane, low-optics manner, utilizing their CD3. And that stands for Conductive Distraction and De-escalation Technology. Now, their flagship product, we all know by now, is called the Glove. It's helped officers not just tens of thousands of times. I heard the other day it's been over 250,000 deployments with no injuries and no deaths. Can you imagine that? They've actually achieved non-lethal status in an arena that predominantly can only offer less lethal results. And when it comes to weapons retention, the Glove at CompliantTechnologies.com, they virtually eliminated weapons confusion. So stay ahead of the game with Compliant Technologies and their revolutionary CD3 that hundreds of agencies have already turned to nationwide. And friends, take it from me, when it comes to safety, this is one of the most common sense hands-on solutions to ever come along. So go to CompliantTechnologies.com today and tell them that Chip and the doctor sent you. Again, that is CompliantTechnologies.com. All right, we got 2 minutes before we come back to the radio portion of the show. I think we're off to a good start, Chief. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the compliance technology demonstration. I just, from hearing about it, and it just seems like a tremendous product, and probably the biggest advance in officer safety and suspect safety since the Glock.
No, you're probably right. I talked to Randy Sutton yesterday. We're getting it added to the website. There's going to be a landing page at thewoundedblue.org, and that landing page will be for this not really it's a fundraiser, but with a little twist. So we're taking, as you know, Chief, And I know people have been asking me like MBS, hey, when are you going to get that landing page up? And I'm getting a hold of Sheriff Jesse, who works with Randy, and he's in charge of running the Wounded Blue. He's gonna get that set up for us. But you're gonna be able to make donations to the Wounded Blue, and you're gonna be able to name a panelist that you would on the show that you would like to see having the glove applied to, and whatever panelist lasts the longest. And it's going to be applied during SHOT Show, unless we end up expanding it and going like off-site. But at SHOT Show, so let's just say that Dr. Joel Schultz, does it, and everybody else from the panel that does it too. But he lasts the longest. That means that he gets a pair of the gloves, and the highest sponsor for him, the highest person that donated the most amount of money in Dr. Joel Schultz's name, that he'll get a pair of gloves. Now, the gloves can only be owned by a law enforcement agency. They can't go to like an individual, but you can donate. If you're working at the agency, you can probably, as long as the agency owns them, you'll get the training and be able to wear them. I would suspect your agency will let you do that. Or you can donate it to an agency. If you're retired like me, I can give them the Tampa Police Department, and it gets the glove at the agency and gets the foot in the door. It's a win-win. So stay tuned. More information coming up about that. All right, guys, welcome back. Leo Roundtable at leoroundtable.com. We've been talking about having policy involving officers, shooting, at moving vehicles, basically. And I know the chief just spoke. What I had mentioned is that I really would like to see policy because I want training involved in it. So, but here's where I'm going with the training, chief. I know that there's more complicated training. We're talking about G-forces and physics, but little things that we've seen, and I've had people on the show that are smarter and know more than I do. Even like Scott Steyer, our Green Beret Delta Force, contributor that's on the show. Like if you're in your vehicle and you're shooting through the windshield, and every one of your shots is having to penetrate and break through the glass in your windshield, the odds of you getting anything on target are extremely limited. And even if you're able to get something, it's going to be shrapnel, right? However, if you are able, even with a rifle, if you're able to break a hole through the windshield and then shoot through that hole at your target, game changer. But a lot of guys, you don't normally see guys doing that in the heat of the moment. But little things like that, like training, it would help them. You may lose the first one or two shots, maybe negligible, right, as far as the results that you get or the desired results. But after you get that hole through that windshield and you're able to shoot through that hole without any obstructions, altering the course of fire, little things like that. And then of course shooting through a windshield and shooting through a side window are different. And maybe even when guys are taking cover behind vehicles in their engine blocks, we know are going to be, if you have a guy with a high-powered rifle shooting at you, you're going to want to be behind an engine block and not just the vehicle door or the door jamb. That's not going to do the trick, but just reinforcing things like that. And there's a difference between if you're shooting at or from a moving vehicle, whether you're stationary or moving, big difference. And then if you're shooting at a vehicle that is either stationary or moving, or whether it's occupied or not. And then we've had some other instances where we've had shootouts where there has been a child in the car or someone else that wasn't immediately visible, child sitting low in the seat and stuff. Most of the time, from my recollection, remarkably, miraculously, the child or that person has normally not been hit or struck or killed. And we've been very lucky on that. But that's why I would like to see more training. So these guys are going through all the scenarios that they're going through. They need that. Don't assume that there's nobody else in that car, like a child or anything, so just those are just the things off the top of my head that I would like to see involved in training. And I would like them to have a policy in place so that it would allow them to at least give some form of training, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think with the increase in the use of vehicles in terror attacks, and the use of vehicles to block law enforcement in protest efforts, I think perhaps the statutes ought to be changed to be clear about the felonious character of using a vehicle as a weapon, and I'm not sure we have standard clarity on that. The thing about the Minneapolis shooting that stuns me is the the woman's cavalier attitude about screwing around with federal agents. And I can't understand the psychology of it, particularly when you see that freeze frame of the last photo before the shots of her, the last video of her. She has this expression on her face that either she's oblivious to the hazard, she's taking delight in harassing folks, or she's just psychotic and doesn't understand that. And all of those may be wrong, because I don't want to make these blanket assumptions like these other knuckleheads do in the media. I've discovered, here's a bumper sticker phrase for you: ignorance begets great confidence.
Oh,
and I'm seeing that in a lot of commentary. So once we need to make sure that suspects realize that using a vehicle to interfere with police officers, and the Philadelphia superintendent, God bless him, the one police executive that was willing, from a major city and from a blue city, that was willing to go to the media and said, don't block a law enforcement with your vehicle, because they have to assume that an ambush is coming. And we don't know, we can't predict what that vehicle's going to do. We don't know if this Minneapolis woman was gonna make a U-turn or continue and hit some innocent person. The idea that was in any way non-threatening or peaceful, or could have been de-escalated, is just a breach of common sense and the laws of physics.
Oh, it was de-escalated rapidly. Well,
and we have to recognize, when we talk about de-escalation, we're talking about trying to get to a place where there's a high threat of somebody getting hurt, and we're trying to get it to a lower threat of somebody getting hurt. And that whole arc of de-escalation may include taking out the person who is creating the threat and protecting both the officers and the bystanders. So you're right, that situation was de-escalated. Nobody else got hurt by this person's highly dangerous activity.
Yeah. So I don't know if there were injuries. The officer definitely got struck and he got dragged. That is unequivocal. That's not even an arguing point anymore. We've got clear video footage on that. But you've given me a good segue to get into the second main topic, talking about Minneapolis. If you're okay, we got a minute and 20 seconds before our next commercial break, but if you're okay, can I go through these titles real quick here and just kind of like we can continue that conversation? Chief? All right. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So look, anyhow, so here's what we have, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna do a segue in the talking about Minneapolis, and then we're gonna be talking about Portland. So on this one, I've got a number of articles, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm going to cover titles, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more of these. But the sources are wide-ranging: WashingtonExaminer.com, Modernity News, AmericaFirstReport.com, Infowars.com, RVMNews.com, and LawOfficer.com. And we're going to be going to commercial break. But let me just start off the first one: the Minneapolis shooting. That settles it. That's from the Washington Examiner. Although the argument goes on, the video of the Minneapolis shooting taken by the Immigration Customs Enforcement agent who shot Renee Good effectively answered the question of whether the agent, Jonathan Ross, acted lawfully. The video and other evidence suggests that he actually did. More information coming back, guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys, introducing Aero Defense by Aero Precision at aeroprecisionusa.com, a beacon of durability, dependability, and all-American craftsmanship in the realm of duty rifles. And yes, we're talking about long guns. They're born from an aerospace engineering company, so these guys know what they're doing. And Aero Defense by Aero Precision, they demand perfection, because selling anything else, doesn't even match up on the lineup. So visit aeroprecisionusa.com for a lineup that matches every discipline, because they basically have something for everybody. And they've been doing this back since 1994. They've been quietly leading the AR builder parts domain, but now they're making waves in what they call a soulless bolt actions and that's not all. Their M4E1 Pro and their Mod 4 handguards, they already hit the market at aeroprecisionusa.com, the embodiments of duty rifle excellence, but now they're tailoring it for the civilian customer. That means that now you guys can start getting your hands on the primo stuff and their M5AR three-way platform spectacular. So don't settle for less when you can have the best. Head over to aeroprecisionusa.com. And we got 4 minutes before we come back to the radio portion of the show, guys. And moving right along. Good commentary. You know, the string, and I don't know if you saw, I imagine you probably did. Did you see what I started on LinkedIn? The whole discussion about the Minneapolis shoot, and I put down, it's probably going to be justified. Oh my gosh. That has turned into a life of its own. And I'm getting there's a lot of people weighing in. I maybe half the people know what they're talking about, but there's a lot of civilians that they have no exposure to law enforcement. Certainly, they're relying everything on video because they're YouTubers, and there's just a lot of people that should not be weighing in because they just don't know enough to weigh in or say anything credibly on the subject. But I've even got some law enforcement officers weighing in against me. And I was very careful about the word. I didn't say that he was justified. I said that I think if I didn't say probably would be something along those lines, or that he I don't think I said he could. I think he said he probably would be. But the law enforcement officers, or that say that are weighing in, that are countering that, or saying no, he's guilty, or he murdered her, or whatever. There's one guy that's impersonating, in my opinion, as being a CIA officer. He's got his picture on there, but
yeah,
you saw that? Yeah, that guy. And then I did some research online and found out that there's a long list of people that I think this guy is falsely saying he's a CIA operative or whatever. But then I have another female officer that's a Leo, but she has not a TIA, what do you call it, transit authority background. She's very, valuable with insight in what she did, but doesn't necessarily transfer over to what we're talking about. And so, because I was curious why she thought that she had problems with me suggesting that he could be cleared. And I'm trying to bring the rhetoric and the temperature down a little bit. And I wouldn't have to do that if I didn't have Jacob Frey, the mayor, or the police chief, O'Hara, and Tim Walz, the governor, going in and saying, murderer, definitely a bad shoot. I wouldn't have to do that. But this guy is more than likely going to be cleared unless the words that come out of the officer's mouth just blow it. Everything that I've seen, it is extremely plausible that this is a completely justified shoot, and I suspect that it is. So there's a lot of people weighing in that it's like you can't, with this age of the internet, everybody's an expert, and it's hard, everybody wants to weigh in, and it's really more difficult in today's world to have these discussions without people that don't know what they're talking about interjecting stuff that's just completely false.
Well, the reality is that the knowledge base for understanding the dynamics of human performance and the physics and all the other science of use of force is not really common knowledge. We know some things. I started policing in 1978. I know that makes me a museum piece, but it wasn't until 2007 where I had to investigate an OIS involving one of my subordinate officers, that all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, she's a human. She wasn't Superman. She did things that humans do within, her training, and it was justified, but it was criticized by fellow law enforcement officers because they just did not have the knowledge base. And I didn't either until I started to research that, because I was getting ready for a big civil lawsuit, which never happened. And then I've been very cautious about knee-jerk reactions ever since.
That's a good point. Coming back to it, guys. I'm gonna start the music. Going back to satellite. Here we go. All right, guys, welcome back. Leo Roundtable at leoroundtable.com, the law enforcement talk show. My name is Chip the Block, and I'm your host. We're joined by Dr. Joel Schultz, retired police chief, and we're in the midst of talking about this debacle in Minneapolis. And really, it's pretty straightforward. I believe. But we're just going through the headlines to catch people up on what's happened over the weekend. So we've got our very first article that I just touched on, the WashingtonExaminer.com, where the Minneapolis shooting, it says that settles it. And they're saying that, the agent who shot Renee Good effectively answered the question of whether the agent, Jonathan Ross, acted lawfully, and that the video and other evidence as well suggests that he actually did. And it goes on to say that regardless of who you believe, Renee Good's death resulted from either her poor decision-making and gratuitously courting danger or Trump's excessive zeal in ramping up immigration enforcement. The legal case comes down to whether the agent reasonably perceived a potentially lethal threat. And this is what former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy wrote. And he continues saying that from what we have seen so far, he did, meaning that he did reasonably perceive a potentially lethal threat. The next title we've got, ICE agent and center of Minneapolis shooting reportedly is in hiding. And it says a federal officer swarmed the agent's home and packed up his belongings. Next title, ICE agent involved in shooting is getting death threats, Border Czar says. That's Tom Homan. Then we got wife of woman shot by ICE becomes a millionaire, thanks, if you guys can believe it, to a GoFundMe page and donation. So Becca Good, according to this article, it says that she's been trash talking ICE agents and encouraging her partner before the shooting, has received an avalanche of donations. Nearly 40,000 people contributed to the fundraiser, and it gives a title of it. I'm not going to give it out because I don't want to have any part in in people going there. But the campaign was paused after it reached $1.5 million, if you can believe that. Then we got the next title. January 6 cop Michael Fanone now wants Americans to shoot ICE agents. I had trouble believing this until I read this. It's got a picture of him. I believe that he was all tatted up, and he just didn't. What was coming out of his mouth just didn't make sense. But former Minneapolis Police Department officer Michael Fanone delivered a scathing critique of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and also Customs and Border Protection. He accused the agencies of repeated abuses of power and called on elected officials and law enforcement leaders to take immediate action to protect the public. He goes on in this rant, very anti-cop. I don't know what happened to this guy after January 6th, or maybe he was just one of these guys that never should have got hired, or if he's I don't know if he's a DEI hire or whatever, but it gets worse. He dismissed calls from police leadership for calm and peaceful protest. He said that these statements failed to address what he described as immediate and ongoing threats to public safety. And then he goes down that rabbit hole that we know better than too. He goes, quote, I don't need to hear from the chief of police that we all need to remain calm and protest peacefully. F you and F that. And he didn't use the word F. He used a four-letter word that starts with an F. And then he goes on, he suggested that if authorities fail to protect the public, citizens may feel compelled to rely on their constitutional rights for self-defense. And then he's talking about the Second Amendment. So he says, quote, because if you're not going to do it, then it's time for the American people to organize and to utilize their Second Amendment right to protect themselves, unquote, if you can believe that. Then we go on our next title, radical anti-ICE mobs, that they are actually hunting down federal law enforcement officers in Minneapolis. They're going to hotels and staking places out, but their target are the feds. And now we finally have Chicago Police Superintendent, who you just talked about, Dr. Schultz. Chicago Police Superintendent, if you box in agents, it's reasonable to believe it's an ambush. So we got Chicago Police Department Superintendent Larry Snelling held a forceful press briefing after the weekend confrontations involving federal immigration agents and protesters. And the superintendent, he criticized dangerous crowd behavior, and he said Snelling issued a blunt warning about dangerous protests tactics, saying that if protesters box in law enforcement officers, including ICE, that they are reasonable to believe that it's an ambush. And I tell you, I was impressed with what he had to say. Chicago, crap. Chief?
Well, and he's, he's absolutely right. I think, ironically, when we see these protesters jumping in front of law enforcement vehicles and tossing rocks and blocking them in with vehicles, it is, I think, a very ironic indication that they trust law enforcement not to hurt them. So if they're protesting by putting themselves in harm's way, expecting that the cops will not hurt them or resist them actively, which often is the case, it's just a twisted type of thinking that says, and and I don't know where all this fits in here. You know, it's interesting with the anti-law enforcement rhetoric that I think basically was gas on the fire with the Obama administration and the and Ferguson. Um, we spent since the 1990s, since the Clinton administration, talking about community policing, connecting with the community, partnering with the community, playing basketball with the kids, playing stickball with the kids, having these little special moments. And at the end of 30 years of community policing, which I wrote my dissertation on, we have probably the highest quality of law enforcement ever in the history of the United States, across the country, from small agencies to federal agencies. We really are doing a magnificent job in many, many ways, and yet we have the most hostility against law enforcement that we've seen, and certainly in my career in lifetime. So I just wonder what kind of monster we've created when we've kowtowed to the public and tried to be friends with them, and they're not being friends back in many, many ways. And I know this is a minority of people, and we still have great support for law enforcement, but these kind of events erodes the support of the bystander who is basically pro law enforcement and law abiding citizen, but they hear all of these pronouncements and they see these supposed masses of people, and they begin to think, well, you know, maybe something is wrong, and maybe I should be more cynical and skeptical. And so, you know, my fear is that we can't write off these protesters and these extremists and this insane rhetoric, and that ex-cop commentator, he needs to be locked up. It has some effectiveness in that it's eroding some of the support for law enforcement, and our response narrative just can never and should never reach the same level of rhetoric and anger to rage bait and get clicks and views and ratings that the other extremists will get. So I'm very concerned about the future of law enforcement in America, and the future of peace for the streets. And the other thing that stuns me is we're not hearing anything about the 1,500 violently criminal aliens that were arrested by the ICE operation in Minneapolis alone. Yeah. And we hear very little about the gang connections of the two people who were shot by federal officers in Portland, and the fact that they were involved in a shooting and gang activity that was a matter of current investigation by the Portland Bureau of Police. Our focus has been manipulated so much to that our presupposition is no longer, as a public, our presupposition is, well, I trust the police. They were probably right, but we'll look into it. And now the presupposition is, wow, I can't understand this, and there must be some fault there, and now I should fear the police. So I think it's a very tenuous time in history. You know, we've lived through Civil War, we lived through the Revolution, we lived through the Depression, we lived through the Obama and Biden administration. So I think we'll get through this, but the seeds that have been planted of mistrust are yielding fruit, and we're going to have to deal with that somehow.
Our first video, rumble.com. This is Butter, our favorite law enforcement video channel. DHS officer knocks this guy to the ground in Minnesota for blocking their vehicle. This protester, and this is after all the stuff that's been going down. I believe, I don't remember looking at that, but I believe this is afterwards. But this guy standing right in front of a DHS vehicle. It's got agents in it, and he's blocking their way. Now, as the Chicago police superintendent just said, and as Chief Schultz said, these guys are attack. Look, it doesn't matter that there could be a mob, that this guy's stopping the vehicle so people can surround it or take him out or snipe or whatever. He's blocking the vehicle We know there's hostilities. So we have a guy, an agent gets out of that truck, goes up and he body checks this guy and knocks him silly on the back of the ground. And then the vehicle is able to proceed because, you know, that vehicle needs to keep moving to get out of there before it gets worse. And then you got the woman that's you know, filming that going, oh, I can't believe, you know, they're screaming and stuff. So we're 30 seconds before our next break. But that is another example on I would like to see more of that, and maybe it would discourage the people from doing what they're doing and trying to ambush these ICE agents. I don't know. I'm going to start the music. Hold that thought, Chief. We'll be right back. All right, guys, it's time to talk about GunLearn at gunlearn.com. And as law enforcement officers, we deal with guns every day, but it's what we don't know about them that gets us into trouble. Injuries, civil lawsuits, accidental discharges, misidentifications, lost prosecutions, and also disciplinary issues. But gunlearn.com, they have your back. You can quickly become extremely firearm knowledgeable by simply learning 14 training modules from the convenience of your home or your office, or by attending a live seminar at gunlearn.com. You can also become a safe, accurate, and competent certified firearm specialist like our very own Captain Brett Bartlett and also attorney Ken Afianco. Now, the course has had huge success in raising the bar of firearm knowledge, and GunLearn has been a trusted source since way back in actually 2011 by gun manufacturers, federal agencies, forensic organizations, and police departments nationwide. Now, the founder, Daniel Kelly's got a deal for you. If you have your own agency, if you're a chief or a sheriff, you can actually host a seminar for absolutely no cost. It's an amazing opportunity. Go to gunlearn.com to get more information. Again, that is gunlearn.com. All right, guys, 2 minutes before we come back to the radio portion of the show. And well, we finally got to a video, Chief. And that was one. I had to put that video number one. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I tell you, that protester that got knocked to the pavement should get up, wipe off his pants, and go shake hands with that officer saying, thank you for saving my life, because I was doing a stupid thing.
You know, yeah, I just, you know, I view our show as educational. You know, we want to, look, you can't, some people, they just don't want to learn anything, right? You would like to think that people watch the show because of the people that we have on the show, the people that are experts in their fields, and that they would at least think that we know more than the average citizen about, you know, police, or we can explain things to them. Like, I still get in battles on LinkedIn and other social media platforms about the weaponization of a vehicle. It's a car. It's not a gun. It's not a knife. It's not a weapon, is what people are thinking. And it's like, they just don't understand that this particular Honda Pilot, I looked it up. It's over 2 tons. It's like 4,600 and some pounds. It's like, if that's not a deadly weapon, I don't know what is. And of course, I've seen people get hit with cars. I've almost been hit with vehicles. You've been hit twice. And look how you turned out, you know? So, I mean, there's definitely some damage that can be, no, but it's a dangerous thing. And I would hope that I wouldn't hesitate and using deadly force if I was in a situation like that, because I know that it can create great bodily injury or death. It's realistic, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. The citizens that we're getting debates with this thing on, you know, some people just don't have the capacity to get it. And I don't mean that they're stupid or dumb. I just mean they just don't have the capacity. It's not their wheelhouse. They shouldn't sit in a jury pool or anything. They just don't, for whatever reason, they just can't get it. Here we go. All right, guys, welcome back. Leo Roundtable at leoroundtable.com. My name is Chip the Block, and I'm your host. We're joined by Dr. Joel Schultz, former police chief. We got Jimmy Knepp writing in that the 2.5 tons, the equivalent of a rhino or a hippo coming at you. I never really thought of it that way, Jimmy, on Facebook. But that's a good analogy. You know, Jimmy knows that I need word pictures. You know, when I read books, I like the pop pictures and like the little pop-up things that read, you know. That's all me. So yeah, words, not too good with words, but yeah, I love pictures. But as Brett would say, but Chief, go ahead. And I know we're talking about before we went to commercial break, we talked about that video of that DHS agent getting out of the vehicle after the protester stopped and stood in front of the vehicle, and he didn't mow the guy down, but he got out and he body checked that guy. He didn't slug, he didn't punch him. He body checked him and knocked him out of the way. And guess what? The vehicle, they didn't sit there and beat up on the guy. The vehicle continued on, and other ICE agents, dealt with this guy, but or DHS agents. But Chief?
Well, and I said this the other day on the show. I think ICE is going to have to evaluate tactics in terms of force protection. They're going to have to anticipate that there is going to be intelligence about their movements and their tactics. And if they get into routines, then it's going to be predictable. They may need to, and I'd hate to see it. They may need to start deploying in armored vehicles for personnel protection and to be able to, maybe something bladed that'll push vehicles out of the way. I don't know what the answer is, but they continue to operate in a very vulnerable way, and not only vulnerable to attack and distraction, which is a big thing, but also vulnerable to being egged into having to respond in a way that the optics are going to be used against them, just like a lot of use of force issues, because all it takes, you have a whole set of circumstances. And the court has recently clarified that when we're looking at a use of force, we need to look at the whole picture. Before the previous legal theory was you just look at the time that the officer made that decision to pull the trigger or use deadly force. And now, they said there's legal relevance to what's happening before. And I think that'll go to this officer's advantage, because that was significant, I think, in his decision.
Well, Chief, I'll tell you, if that happened in Tampa, we would knock them silly. There's no way that would happen. And we have, a Democratic mayor, but we are in a sheriff that is, he's a Democrat, but he's either a left-leaning Republican or a right-leaning Democrat. But let me tell you, that said, we would knock them. It would never happen where I live, and in a lot of the jurisdictions. So I really, the lack of police. Well, the police are allowing this stuff to go on. I'm telling you, we would never allow that to happen here. So it just, I don't lose sight of that. It's happening in Minneapolis, and this is going on in Portland. These are typically places that are just so. I hate to say anti-law enforcement, because they have law enforcement that works and components there, but they don't back up the law enforcement officers, and they're instructed not to back up ICE officers. So if that could just get fixed alone, this problem, I believe, for the most part, would be solved. You may have an agitator here or there, but it's just these liberal politicians that are in charge and giving instructions to these officers not to back up, and they're allowing this to go on. These ICE agents shouldn't even have to deal with this kind of crap. This should be local law enforcement all day long, preventing this stuff from going on. But my 2 cents.
No, I agree. But when you said if this were to happen in Tampa, that's not a question with these ICE operations in these hostile territories. You can't say, well, if this is it is going to happen. When this happens, what are we going to do? And I agree that if they had a phalanx of protective local police officers, these things would not be allowed to happen. And it just gripes me to no end for the Minneapolis officials to say, hey, we didn't want to have anything to do with this operation, but we want to be involved in the investigation.
Yeah.
You already played your hand. You folded. You're out.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Well, Chief, we got to cover the next one, the Portland one. I'm curious. I can't wait because we're talking about a police chief here, and this is a Portland police chief. I can't wait to hear your words, and I have no idea what you're going to say because we haven't really talked about this. But Newsbreak.com, Portland police chief cries while confirming the pair shot by a Customs and Border Patrol agent were tied to the Tren de Aragua gang, the Venezuelan gang. The Portland's police chief broke down in tears Friday while confirming that 2 illegal immigrants shot by a federal agent had suspected ties to this violent Venezuelan gang, according to KGW News. Portland police chief, his name is Bob Day. He said the 2 suspects wounded in a U.S. Customs and Border Protection encounter. They had a nexus to the gang. backing up a Department of Homeland Security statement released earlier in the day. So it ends up that the feds were actually right. Now, a CBP agent opened fire on Venezuelan gangsters. It gives their names out after they weaponized their vehicle, fleeing a traffic stop that happened on Thursday after what happened in Minneapolis. Now, DHS involved. Both these people remain hospitalized in stable condition, and they're in federal custody now. Now, the police chief said that he initially hesitated to disclose the suspected gang ties because he was concerned about what he called the, and I'm going to put this in quotes, quote, historic injustice of victim blaming, unquote. And he stressed that the shooting remains under investigation, that the information was released for transparency. But I also read that he didn't want to adversely affect, Hispanics and people. My wife's Colombian. You think that they're taking it as a slight that these guys are connected with a gang that ended up getting shot in Portland? But this chief is crying. I've seen so much commentary in social media about that. What are your thoughts, Chief?
Well, the first press meeting that came out with this phalanx of politicians that wanted to get their sound bites on and their pictures on the screen. I mean, it like I said before, it looked like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. It was dozens of officials. And the chief tried to be kind of neutral and not quite as antagonistic as the other politicians were, or accusatory, but he bent over backwards to say, we were not involved in this operation, had no involvement in the immigration enforcement. And my thinking is, you knew these guys because they were already suspects in a previous violent gang-related shooting. You should have been working with federal authorities to solve that crime and get those people off the street. So, and I want to give them as much credit as I can. And I don't have any problems with police officials getting a little emotional on things when they've got bad news. But here's my subjective presuppositional interpretation of his tears is, I'm so sorry, these weren't innocent people, so that we could be really clear about that this was not a justified shooting and this was a terrible injustice, and we would never have done anything like that. I think his crocodile tears were because that these people were criminals and they precipitated the violence that caused their end of their lives. That's the only thing I can figure. I'm not sure what he was upset about, other than it really ruined his narrative that these people were really bad guys.
Yeah, and of course these guys were shot and injured, unlike Minneapolis, where she was shot and killed. But of course, look, if they could have easily have been killed, and that. The same things at play. The officer was shooting to stop the threat. And guess what? We used to, it's just when I came on the police force in 83, we shot the kill, right? And then, of course, about maybe 15 years later, they changed the verbiage. Remember, Chief? And now you no longer shot the kill, you shot to stop the threat. Did they change the zone or where your shots went when they changed it to shoot to stop the threat? No, they didn't, So,
and we never try to kill an active shooter. We just neutralize them.
Yeah. So, hey, this has been some tough topics. I'm glad we had you on the day show, Dr. Schultz. And you're still you're still effectively effecting change positively for the law enforcement community. And so, thanks so much for being on the show and taking advantage of the reach that we have. And I'm hoping that at SHOT Show, and I know that we're cutting to the Wounded Blue time here. Randy won't mind. But when you're walking around the SHOT Show next week, I hope people are coming up to you and say, "Hey, Dr. Schultz, I see you on Leo Roundtable." I hope that's what happens. So, but anyhow, thanks so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
I'll be wearing a mask.
If you, I know better. Hey, I do want to mention the Wounded Blue, thewoundedblue.org, Lieutenant Randy Sutton's 501c3, helping cops of the world are hurt. I support them, monthly. So I encourage everybody else to do that too. And shout out to our sponsors. We have Galls.com, our title sponsor, CompliantTechnologies.com, AeroPrecisionUSA.com, Gunlearn.com, Medicare.live, SafeguardRecruiting.com, TwoBells.com, and finally, FishOrlandoBass.com with Zach, Bass Fishing Charter. We'll see you guys back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. And we're going to keep this thing going for another minute and a half just to keep the everybody happy. But guys, I do want to mention fishorlandobass.com and also Gulls again. You know, if you guys haven't hooked up with Zach yet, because I don't think I talked about at the beginning of the show, he's got a bass fishing charter in the Orlando area, and you also have the option to hunt the Florida alligator. It's not an all-inclusive. You don't do bass fishing and hunt alligator, but you make your choice, and you either do the bass fishing charter or else you do the alligator hunting, and you catch and relocate the Florida alligator. It's an amazing opportunity. It's only in Orlando, guys. So, you know, hook up with Zach at fishorlandobass.com. And don't forget, we do have that special code for you if you want to do shopping at Gulls. It is Radio 15, and that'll get you 15% off your next order at gulls.com. So don't forget about that as well. And hook up. I'm on LinkedIn. I know that Chief Schultz is on LinkedIn as well. So you can hook up with us at LinkedIn and find us on there. We'd love to see you. Any final words, Chief, or any books that you have? I know you're not at the home location, and you're at any books or anything you're pushing right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything to display, but always have the Daily Inspiration book, the book about PTSD, and the Badge in the Brain. All those very reasonable prices. The postage rates are ridiculous. I almost charge. It almost costs me more to mail it than it does to get the thing published. But we'd be glad to hear from you. And if you just if you have a question or want to know more about any topic, just schultzco@gmail.com. I'm an open book.
All right. I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Chief. Hey, streamers, thanks for watching the show, guys. We appreciate it. MVS and everybody over at Rumble, we appreciate it. And MVS says, hand out body bags to the protesters and have them put their name on it just in case they need to be tagged and bagged. Wow. Where did that come from? Hey, thanks for the support, guys. We appreciate it. Thanks for making us smile, MVS. And we'll see you guys back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. And I'm going to go and